Hey, it's Jeff and Kane. Welcome back to the Infinite Mindset Podcast. How you doing, Jeff?
Good. This is an interesting subject today. What do we got on the table? Because we were just having a discussion about this topic.
So we're excited to have you back with us today. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about how to know whether your team is using AI well, not just using it. Or how do you know if you're using it?
Like, there's people that are just, does your company use AI? Yes. Then there's using it well. Two different things.
Yeah. So it's also something to ask yourself and start to consider if you feel like you're using AI well enough, as there's a massive difference between object usage and value realization. And this is what we want to start to get into in today's topic and understanding is, how do you know if you're really using AI well, if there's real value that's coming out of it versus if you're just activating it? Now, right now, 88% of organizations use AI somewhere in the business, but only 32% are scaling it into mission critical workflows tied to business outcomes. It's a big discrepancy. And so what's happening is a lot of people are using AI, but essentially it's just creating a tech curiosity. If you really want to get strategic leverage out of it, then actually have to start measuring different things.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's look at a business. A business is measuring how much. The way a successful measurement would be: is this AI and the usage saving time? Is it reducing errors? Is it actually supporting the revenue? Not by how many tools they're using, right?
Yeah. So let's take a look at what are some of the best usages of how do you know if you're using it well. And so first, signal of using it well is that it's actually embedded into the workflow. So it's not actually a side tool or something someone just goes to answer a question, but it's actually in the workflow. And there's a lot of resistance.
I want to mark out on that. What does that mean? So if someone's an employee, part of their workflow is to go to AI and use this tool to enhance it. What does that mean by?
Well, for example, if I said go communicate with somebody and send them an email, you can't do that without a computer. I mean, what are you going to send an email on if you're not on a computer or some sort of device, right? And so that's the point. Now, nobody goes, we got to use a computer now. We're going to dependent upon computers to send emails. I mean, maybe a few, people that are not.
That used to be the narrative, by the way.
Yeah, well, and that's a little bit of AI at the moment. So, but the people that are really, of course, moving stuff forward in business and everything is they're not concerned about using the technology as part of their workflow. In fact, it's built into their workflow. It's part of the way that it actually has to be done. In other words,
done successfully, it would look like what? Like
that AI is actually adopted into your workflow, and it's creating a meaningful increase of the outcome. In other words, if you took AI out of that workflow, you would see a meaningful decrease in quality of output.
Yeah.
I mean, right now there's a survey that just found that 74% of employees are using AI regularly, but only 33% have any formal training. So what that means is that most people are essentially using it poorly or inconsistently, right? So if people are saying, everybody here at our organization is using AI, but there's no training or metrics or standards, then they're still essentially in pilot mode. They're not amplifying anything.
Actually, that could actually be a disaster too, because it'll amplify it. What AI is like an amplifier. It'll amplify mediocrity.
Yeah. So what's actually happening right now is that, in fact, people are measuring and teams are measuring kind of activity or engagement. They're not actually measuring impact, which seems logical, like that would just do that. But, a lot of teams are just kind of like, hey, let's just get people interacting with it and going. That's fine for a week, but then you've got to actually get people into impact metrics. So good teams are not measuring outcomes. They are measuring outcomes. They're not measuring logins or activity. They're actually measuring the impact on things.
I think there's a narrative running where companies need to look like they're using AI so they seem cutting edge. So they're saying, everyone start using AI. Okay, look how many people are using AI. And then they're able to keep up with the narrative that they're using AI, which has them not put their attention actually on creating KPIs that actually measure the success of them using the AI. So they're not investing in it for the people.
Yeah, and the question would be is if you're a consultant or an entrepreneur or somebody out there working this, are you and or your clients, are they measuring the right metrics? This is something that each consultant, but even an entrepreneur internally or a leader has to start to think about. What are the metrics? And we want to think about impact metrics, right? So things like, productivity impact scores. How much time is actually saved? How much of our workflow is actually accelerated? How do we measure that, right? You could even do workflow penetration metrics, like how many processes do we do here are just now touched by AI. Now, there are teams that are resistant and they're like, well, we want to keep it very organic. Okay, I mean, sure, you're not going to be able to compete with those that are essentially building AI into your workflows. The question of how much and where do you want to have AI be engaging in the workflow, that's totally each company's prerogative. And of course, if somebody is extremely, let's say resistant, then they may want to keep something very, very organic. Maybe you want to keep your sales conversation super organic. You don't want any AI in them, or you want follow-up systems to be 100% organic, so it's human to human. Or maybe that's not important to you. And in fact, you want efficiency and you want consistency. And therefore, you're going to actually measure the percent of your sales processes that are now being touched and integrated with AI.
So when you walk into an organization, Kane, and you notice, how do you notice that they're using AI well? Or what do you see? What does it look like if you're a fly on the wall?
So three different levels. First one is, are people actually engaging in it and actually even utilizing it? Two is it actually penetrated their workflows? Is it actually into their workflows? And three is, are there metrics to be measuring how this transition has been helping them or adding value? Because look, there are times when you could put AI all over the place, and you should. I mean, this is an experimentation phase that you need to take action on now, not 2 years from now when everybody's got it really refined. So the question is it actually working? And if it's not, you pull it back out. You just go back to your process of whatever you're doing, maybe automation or human or organic or whatever it was. But if it is, if you're measuring it based upon the metrics of how much time it's saving you, what your output gains are you seeing productivity lift? Are you seeing everybody actually is it working? Or is it just a conversation that it should be working? Right.
It reminds me of like when you bring on a sales team, and the sales team is extremely busy, and they're really busy, and the numbers, and then like, well, how many business deals did you close? Not many, but they're very busy.
Yeah, and there's also a reality that we're not seeing every single person in every single department having the same type of metric success, right? And so this is another thing that's kind of a little bit like in the culture.
It might be more useful in certain lanes and in certain processes, huh?
Yeah, I mean, physical workers might find certain things. Developers might be finding different things in your company. Knowledge workers are seeing, a much faster output than, let's say, other, areas. If the legal teams feel like, for compliance and research, they need to be doing more checking of the outputs to make sure that it's doing it, versus knowledge workers are actually able to do a lot more data work by just having AI take care of it. You may say that there's, 30% more efficiency on the knowledge workers, and there's only 5% more efficiency on the legal workers. That's all fine. It's just a matter of looking at the little metrics each month and making sure everybody's getting great value out of it.
So what would you say, what does AI preparedness, like actually in this world, look like for a normal business?
Well, the bottom line is there's teams who are using AI, there's teams that are understanding AI, and they're two different things. And this is a thing that this has kind of become the race to use it. People often think you gain understanding by using it. Sort of. I mean, yes.
I think it's necessary to get your feet wet. I would
Sure.
actually say at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want to play tennis, you want to master tennis.
You got to get on the court.
You got to get on the court. You got to hit some balls around. But very quickly, you also understand if you want to, be able to compete and you want to move fast, you need to get a mentor or a master that works with you, or a consultant or somebody that comes in and actually does that. So it's very important that, I think everybody is looking for somebody that's really like clear about how to integrate it, implement it into their world, and helping with their mindsets and helping with their actual use of it. So right now, 74% of workers are using AI, but 33% have no formal training, right? So that means that most of the marketplace here, and it's just a big area. Most of it's they're using it intuitively, inconsistently, and very riskily, because they don't even know whether what they're looking at is coming out as, whether it makes sense or not. Some people were talking about this actually this morning in another community of ours, is that in Europe they were actually doing tests where they were showing them AI generated commercials, and in that culture they didn't even know that these were AI generated. Right. And so those that are not educated on or understand it, they're kind of just trying to just understand what's happening in front of them. They're actually presenting more risk to the company because they can't actually even determine the difference between what is or should be and what's real and what's not.
That can be pretty expensive for the team. So let's say there's an organization, they just decide to wait it out for another couple of years. What do you think? What would happen if they just waited out and said, I'm going to wait till everyone figures this whole AI thing out? Versus them right now, there's a bit of transformation, like we said in our other show, like the actual metamorphosis phase, and no one really knows where it's totally going to go, but we know we're in the cocoon. And then there's other people who will just wait until it's finally formed. What would happen? What's the benefit of being in the cocoon right now?
So I think if you just are consistently just playing with stuff, you're going to reach a phase of adoption, but not of true value. And these are two different things. And I think a lot of companies have these two things completely confused, that if you have adoption, then you have true value. And that's not. I mean, you could be, let's say, spinning your wheels all day long doing things, but if there's no true value being produced, then you have to make sure that you're not enthusiastically running in the wrong direction.
It sounds like a bunch of busy salespeople not selling anything.
Exactly. So, adoption, where companies have been measuring more based upon how many tools are they using, or are people using the features, or are teams experimenting? Okay, it's a first step, no problem, but it's not really where the true value lives. And what you want to be checking in for is, are you actually able to measure a reduction in, cycle times, or improving accuracy in things that you're doing, or are you able to increase the throughput, or reduce the, the product to market timeline? Are you able to measure is impacting the revenue, right?
I mean, it really goes back to some of the fundamentals. What gets measured, we get results in, right? So it's people just running around, they're measuring how much adoption they're doing, how much they're using it versus what they are using it for.
Yeah. And a lot of the early statistics, like McKinsey was pointing out, that AI adoption has been going up to like 78% in companies. But adoption is not the same thing as quantifiable business value.
I bet 78% people are just using it like they use email, but they're not actually. So we almost want to retag that to the stat should be impact adoption, not just adoption.
Correct.
But generally, I think people that do start using it, if they're depending on the level of intelligence and how they can map it to how it becomes actually impactful. But that'll amplify your team. You'll have the people that aren't useful, the people that can't do that, they'll leave or get fired.
Yeah, so let's leave it with this. So the biggest failure in companies isn't under adoption. It's actually overconfidence. People thinking that they're doing more with it, or they're actually creating more value with it just because they're using it. Just because everyone's using AI doesn't mean they're using it well. It just doesn't mean that they're adding value. Doesn't mean that it's measurable in the ROI. So you have to really be able to understand, what are the metrics that you are calibrating for success, and what are your team's metrics, what are they calibrating for success, and then making sure that everybody's kind of checking in and making sure that it's happening.
It reminds me when I'm using AI and it starts talking to me, you're doing great. You're doing, this is so good. This is so good. There comes a point where you go, wait a minute. So when you say overconfidence, because AI can definitely build that, what would you say and how to mitigate against that?
So I think you need to get some real value metrics on your dashboard and understand whether you're hitting those. If you don't have value metrics in your dashboard, you're just documenting activity. You're just talking about how many people are actually utilizing it. And remember, it's not about tools and features. It's about how it's integrated into your work at your company, and whether you've been redesigning your work in your company to really support that. So it's not really, the secret is not whether your team or people around you are using it in your team. It's actually how well they are using it. And how well it's become embedded into your workflows and changed outcomes.
I think that's where having people come in that know what they're doing around that is key for the companies to do that. So what would you say when people are going into the company and they're just adopting it? One thing, do you think they'll naturally start to actually use it for impact? Like that's
I think ultimately,
or maybe the winners will rise.
I think ultimately they want to. I think that, the Covey matrix, the old Covey matrix of urgent and important. Remember, you'd have like a little urgent, and then, urgent, not urgent, important, not important. And the whole thing of that, actually, which is really an apropos metaphor for this, or I'll draw this real quickly, is essentially, and many people didn't even understand the Covey matrix. So you had your urgent, not urgent, your important, and not important. Right? Sometimes it's drawn the other way, but either way. And you basically, what everybody would do, everybody does the urgent and important stuff, right? This is the first area that you go to, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's great. And so what everybody thought about this is that you actually were supposed to just be a better categorizer of what's urgent and important. But this is actually not necessarily, I think, the biggest aha out of this whole thing. It's that when you're done with the urgent and important stuff, you actually tend to go to the urgent, sorry, this should say not important, sorry, it's an I here. You actually, instead of going to from the urgent and important, you tend to go to the urgent but unimportant. This is typically where you go. And what actually needs to happen instead of this is you actually need to be going this way. You actually want to go from the...
So define those again real quick. So the first one is when the number one is?
So number one is urgent and important. This is typically, and most people can kind of get, there's stuff that's on fire, stuff that's urgent and important.
Yep.
But the big win from this is not doing that or knowing that, because what most people did is they said, okay, yeah, I need to be working on urgent, important. So, I get it. I shouldn't be working on unimportant, unurgent stuff. Obviously, nobody really needs a matrix to see that. But the win from this whole thing was not that actually it was about being able to better prioritize your urgent and important stuff. It was, the problem is that when you get done with your urgent and important stuff.
Because AI does speed that up, by the way.
Yeah, the energy in your body around urgency would direct you towards the wrong next step, which is to go to the urgent and unimportant area, not important.
And that's where people get busy, and they're just getting busy being busy, and that's using the AI versus actually.
Yeah, the best thing is to go to the non-urgent but important after the urgent but important is done. The non-important is never important.
Yeah,
right.
A lot more strategy.
So that's a little bit what's happening here, is that people are like, they're energetically sorting for adoption. Like, are you using it? Are you engaging? Did you see the newest thing? Did you try the new image? Did you see that? Hey, Nana Banana did this. Oh my gosh, did you see how open? And they're caught up in this like urgent, but not important, right? And that's the big issue. They go from urgent, important to not urgent and important. And there's a high situation for that going on in culture and in companies right now. There's a lot of not important getting done with these tools because it feels urgent or important to pay attention to it. In the meantime, they really want to go to the not urgent but important.
So I think it's just a human
which
thing.
Which is the value creation. Sorry, just to finish that. So
yeah.
They're going from adoption, they want to be moving to value creation.
Well, this is a natural thing for humans, whether they have AI or not. They get done with their tasks, but let's say the average task it takes them 2 hours, but with AI it takes them 20 minutes. Now they've got over an hour and a half left. And what they do is they go to urgent and unimportant things versus actually doing things that are actually building value.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's leave it there. I think we give you a bunch of great things to think about and ways to take into your business, or if you're consulting, take it in there. In the meantime, we'll see you at the next Infinite Mindset podcast, and hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next time.
See ya.